This is TWiT.
So if you didn't already know, people are going bananas over a Wi-Fi vulnerability that's called, well, that's been dubbed KRACK, spelled with a K, K-R-A-C-K. Jerry, you wrote up an awesome explainer on this. Actually, I have to give you total credit where it's due. So many of these stories happen where it's like, this, you know, this vulnerability on Android, and everybody should be frightened because it affects 89.9 million, you know, percent of all users of Android, and you're never going to get updated and whatever. You're always the voice of reason because you write these awesome explainers where you come in and you pick it apart and you don't buy into the negative hype necessarily. You kind of explain it to a point to where it's like, yeah, you know, this might be bad, but how is it going to actually affect you, and what are the things that you can do to protect yourself? So you did that again here. Really appreciate that. What is KRACK in this particular, you know, reference of the word?
And is it whack?
Yes, is KRACK whack? I think it probably is. But what can you tell us about this?
Everybody knows you need to enter a password to log on to Wi-Fi, whether it's your own or, you know, if you're at a hotel or whatever, you need to enter a password. The system, I'll use the word system, and you people out there that know that's not quite right, don't yell at me, that oversees the administration of that password and the encryption and making sure everything matches is called WPA2. And it's been around forever, and there's never been any serious real hacks against it. And then all of a sudden this, and it, in the case of Android, it just totally defeats it. It affects every Wi-Fi device.
Everyone.
Now, everyone. Microsoft has patched Windows 10 and I think Windows 7. iOS, watchOS, macOS, and OS X. They've made a distinction there. The betas of the next version are already patched. As far as phones, that leaves Android.
Yeah.
Google has the patch. The patch went into the upstream Linux kernel the minute this was announced. But of course, there's the distribution is the problem. Google says it will be in the update that's coming on November 6th. So maybe 1% of the people that have a Nexus or a Pixel or a BlackBerry phone will have the patch, and then the rest has to wait for everything to roll out. It's not the end of the world. Nobody can steal your password and log into your Wi-Fi. What they can do is get around the restrictions so they can see the traffic that goes back and forth between your Wi-Fi router and your phone or your computer. And that's not as scary as it sounds either, because what they can't do is if you go to a website and you look up at the bar where you enter the address, you might see a lock, you might not, but you'll notice most of the time it says HTTPS. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That means it's encrypted end to end, all the data you send back and forth. If they get that data, and they can't do anything with it. There are ways that you can brute force and decrypt that, but I mean, I'm not a movie star or work for the government. Nobody's going to take that, take the time to do that to me. And while I love you guys, they're probably not going to do that, take the time to do it for you either, or anybody listening. If you're just, you're not a target. It's just not worth it. The big problem here is not that it affected so many devices or that it affected Android version 6 and higher so much worse than any other devices, but that Android is so popular and it's going to have such a difficult time pushing out the patch. That, to me, was the real story behind all this. But, of course, the internet hears hack and Wi-Fi and affects every device, and everybody freaks out. And I think sometimes the goal is to make everybody freak out with some of the language people use.
Yeah, news is very reactionary. Like
Yes.
the news cycle is very reactionary, and people that write the news, and I mean, we are absolutely included in that, because when you read something like that, it's hard not to, at the very least, address it, but at the very most, really kind of think it through to, like, what's the worst case scenario? What is possible? It always hinges around, well, what is possible thanks to this, not what is likely. And
Right.
More often than not, and you point this out time and time again, what is likely is not what is possible in all of these cases, because there's actually a lot of elements that have to kind of come into place that just it's not that you can't expect that that's going to happen to random person connecting to the internet.
Absolutely.
That would ever happen to you.
If you want to go by what is possible, oh man, shut your phone off
and
put it in a tinfoil bag and throw it away.
Right.
But what's practical is the real issue. If somebody can easily steal your data that lets them get into your bank account, that's going to happen. Thankfully, that's not easy or even possible. I don't think anybody's been able to, hack Apple Pay or anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have a tempered reaction. And oddly enough, I'm the type of person. Okay, the minute this was finished, I started checking my router firmware. This stuff drives me insane. I try to be very security conscious, and I hate the fact that the phone that's in my pocket has a known live vulnerability and the entire world knows that it's out there. Mm-hmm. But then again, I can tell myself, it's like you said, what's practical versus what's possible. And in this case, it's not much is practical.
Mm-hmm. VPN plugging in your computer, are these ways to I mean, obviously HTTPS is one way to know that you're encrypted on both ends.
One note on HTTPS, actually, Jason, which I think is interesting. Generally, there's such a movement on the web moving to HTTPS. I just recently, for one of my sites for ifanboy.com, we just recently moved to a new server and went through the whole, added the SSL certificate, so we have that encryption and all that sort of stuff. Previously, one of the problems with my old servers was I didn't have a certificate in there, and I actually got a note from Google saying, FYI, your site does not have HTTPS. After this date, we will show an error message to people who search for it, not an error message, but a warning message to be careful. So like Google's taking aggressive steps to not only protect users, but to make sure server administrators are applying SSL certificates to their websites, as they should, because that leads to a safer web. But I thought that was really interesting to get it from a SysOps standpoint from Google saying, hey, you need to install this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's maybe it should have been done a little earlier, in my opinion,
Yes.
But I love to see it be proactive, not reactive.
Yep.
And then kind of tying back to what you're saying is kind of the bigger story. And this absolutely comes up time and time again. And it's more and more of a frustration for me. And I think we all agree is just kind of the prolonged update chaos that swirls around Android, which is just the fact that knowing that this exists, like you say, knowing that people understand that it exists, it's a known vulnerability, whether it's going to happen to you or whether it's not, it exists. If you have the wrong phone, and let's admit that, be honest, that a lot of people have the wrong phone. They have a phone that's never going to be updated, never going to get a security update. You just kind of have to trust that it never will happen to you. And
Yep.
I mean, that's just, I wish that there was some way, and maybe Project Treble is kind of the beginnings of Google taking this whole update aspect of the OS seriously, but we still have to wait a long time to see the effects of that. But I really wish we could get to a point to where this wasn't an open question. Like, is it possible to expect Google to require OEMs to push out security updates? I mean, how would that even look, and is that possible?
How would you penalize those who don't follow the rules?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Google's already in hot water in the EU. If they took another step and said, okay, if you can't keep your phone up to date, we're going to kick you out of the Play Store, they would kick Google out of the EU.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. Google isn't responsible for Samsung. Part of me thinks that they should be. Google's name is on the box. If it were my name, I would want to do everything I could to keep it, a little bit shinier than it is. But in the end, it's the original agreement was, okay, if your phone can do this and this and this, you can use the Play Store and we'll let you pre-install it. Okay, it did. That's done. That's the agreement. It's finished. Mm-hmm. It's a shame. Open source doesn't work that way. Open source software only works when all parties involved have a desire to keep it up to date. And that doesn't happen with Android. And that makes me kind of sad.
Yeah. It's always about the next shiny thing to sell. Why support
your
catalog when you've got a new device coming out in a month and you want everybody to just buy that new device?
And capitalism, y'all.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
To be fair, I've talked to a lot of people that work at LG or Samsung or HTC. They want to do this. They want to keep the phones updated. It's a lot of work, but it's not so much work that it's insurmountable. It's just a time equals money sort of thing, and they just do not have the time or the money to keep every phone updated as long as they can.
Yeah.